Well, I got to admit to you guys that prior to coming up here, I was extremely nervous, but I'm not nervous anymore because I was nervous about not giving this talk, but walking up with a big stain on my white shirt. And if you guys know me, I'm as klutzy as it comes. And I was going to ask the Golden Dan if I could wear his jacket if I did have a stain on my shirt. So I want to begin this talk the same way that Christine and I begin all of our mornings, with gratitude. I want to thank each of you for giving me your attention, for giving us your attention for the next 25 minutes. And I really want to acknowledge David and BJ and the entire Tiny Pulse team for putting on something that is incredibly special. So before we go any further, let's give them a round of applause. So here we go. So my story started when I was 17. As a kid, I saw myself going down one of two paths. I was either going to become a professional baseball player, or I was going to run my own business. While most kids were watching Friends and Full House, I was outside playing baseball, running my solopreneur landscaping business, or watching CNBC, actually. Okay, in full disclosure, I was also watching Home Improvement because that show was amazing. And does everyone know what time it is?
Tool time.
Yes, there you go. And so at the age of 17, I sustained a labral tear in my left shoulder. And that immediately overnight changed any prospects I would have had. Immediately, recruiters and scouts that otherwise would have looked at me moved elsewhere. So quickly, I became enamored with anatomy and physiology. I was a four-sport athlete. I was at the prime of my health and my fitness, and to sustain that kind of injury was humbling, and I didn't feel like that should happen to a 17-year-old. So I became enamored, and obsessed with anatomy and physiology, and one thing led to another, which has allowed me to stand in front of you today as the co-founder of this award-winning company. We are shooting for #1 best places to work in Washington for a small business. We got #3 last year in Washington State. We got #7 the year before, so we're on the right trajectory. And so that is a little bit about me, and I want to turn it over to Christine to introduce herself.
Thanks, Sean. So I've never played baseball. I haven't watched that much Home Improvement, sorry. But I actually came to Kinetic just 7 months ago. And I won't go deep into my bio, you can find it on the website. But the thing that might surprise you is I actually left a executive level position at Starbucks Coffee Company, where I was responsible for over 100 people on my team to work in this awesome, inspiring, mission-driven company of 35 people with 2 locations in Seattle. Really, what drove me to come to Kinetic was I wanted to have more of a direct impact on people's lives, because Kinetic impacted my life. I actually was a patient of Kinetic's 3 years ago. Sean was my first rehab person, and I had come to Kinetic with a running injury. I was a new runner. I didn't know anything about strength training and things like that. And I was so blown away by Kinetic's service and how I felt. In addition to the results I achieved, I was like, I need to be a part of this someday. So fast forward 3 years, I've run 11 half marathons. I ran my first marathon. I'm training for my second in 2 weeks. And now I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Kinetic, which means I'm responsible for growth strategy and how do we get there. And as a small company, I'm responsible for a lot of other things too. Marketing, HR, operations, you name it. But I love it. It's been a great change for me. So Sean's gonna set up a little bit about more who we are and what we do. And then we're gonna share some stories of some challenging times for us that actually happened a few years ago, and what we learned from them, and some of the things that we see on our radar ahead.
Raise of hands, how many of you are representing a company that has 50 or less employees? Raise your hand. Okay. So we are a team of 35, like Christine said, but we have all the ambition in the world to double that to 70 and go even further to 700. This talk, I really believe, is a live journal entry, if you will. I want the 699th, the 700th employee at Kinetic to look at this video and say, well, philosophies may have changed because our industry is changing, but our principles, our values are as true now as they were when they had a team of 35. So we have made a lot of mistakes, but let me kind of recap again what we do. We are a sports chiropractic company. We're a hybrid, a cross between physiotherapy, sports medicine, and fitness. And really, it's our job, our duty, our pleasure to help our patients change their story. And so in order to do that, we need to understand their story. If you look at here on the bottom left, that's our photo from the award ceremony when we got number 3. But if you look at the other frames, that's kind of the day in the life of Kinetic. We host workshops, which I'll touch on in a minute. We have 2 locations, soon to be 3, maybe 4. And that's what we do. As you can see, there's a lot of color. We believe in an inspiring atmosphere, which, to be honest, in our industry has been pretty stale for 20 to 30 years. You walk in, waiting room, hallway, treatment room, and just maybe you might have a little gym in the back. We wanted full transparency, and with that, you got to eliminate walls whenever you can. So when you walk into Kinetic, you walk into a big rectangle or square. You walk into energy, you walk into hellos and fond farewells from every corner of the room. And of course, you have an amazing team to support you every step of the way. We put on, in addition to treating at our clinics, we put on workshops. And these workshops are about helping to prevent shoulder, knee, and lower back pain, and many others. We host those at Kinetic and other facilities, so we like to say it's either at our house or your house. And then we also host workshops at companies, because healthier employees are happier employees, and when people are happy, everyone wins. We've hosted workshops at companies like Google, Big Fish Games, and of course, Tiny Pulse. Yeah. And so that's what we do. You know, we've learned many lessons along the way, and we're still learning. We're learning on the job. So this is kind of a checkpoint for us. We're telling you what we've learned up until this point. We do not have it all figured out. That's why I was so excited to learn from every speaker, and I've learned so much. I'm so excited to deploy everything I've learned come Monday morning. And hopefully you can follow along with Kinetic and learn as we're going, or kind of get some information on how we move forward in our journey and our story. 2014 was a bad year. It should just say ... a bad year. And it's personal to me because my son was born in December of 2013. And you know, we founded in late 2010. By 2012, the company that I co-founded was kind of unfamiliar to me. I mean, I helped birth this company. I helped foster it and grow it. Yet a couple years later, I didn't really know what it had become. I just knew that it was different. It wasn't bad, it was just different. By 2014, the bottom fell out. Within 6 months, we lost 50% of our team. Now, we had a team of about 10 people. You lose 50% of that. Yeah, things are kind of bad. We had a choice. Either we fight or flight. Either we exist to understand why we let this happen and correct it, or we cease existing. And so we decided to take a humble, hard look at where we messed up. Culture in 2014, that was an idea. It wasn't an action for us. You know, does that sound familiar? We heard culture, but we didn't know how to implement culture. We didn't know where culture started. Does it start from the top down? Does it start from the bottom up? Does it start from the middle out? We didn't know. So we picked ourselves back up. We implemented a focused culture, and what we did is we made sure that we did the antithesis of everything that we did wrong, like poor communication. I mean, that is the bedrock. That is the cornerstone. And we made sure that that became a priority, and we really focused on how do we, double down on our vital people, how do we onboard? And that's exactly what that first bullet point is. It was about getting everyone on the bus. And while 50% of our team had decided to move on to other things, we were really going to triple down on the people that stayed with us, that really execute our values, even without having with values on the wall. They just innately execute them. We tripled down on them, and we asked them to be the eyes and the ears to our company and help train new team members whenever possible. We started with more transparent communication, and as Scott mentioned yesterday, which really kind of spoke to us, is as he grew, he found that communication became more challenging, as we all know. What we deployed was the Friday emails. And like Scott mentioned, he deployed what's called the Friday Note, which I love that idea because it created a log that you can chronicle and you can kind of unveil at a special occasion, right? Or kind of bind into a book to give someone. I love that idea, and that's one of the things that we're going to be implementing come Monday. We built relationships with one another. And the thing is, our team, while we're all different, we're all unique, we're all diverse, our worldview is similar. And it's the worldview to be an optimist, to really be a servant to our patients. That's something that we can all get behind, and that's the relationship cornerstone that we're all, or the glue, if you will, that kind of binds us all together. We've also implemented culture ambassadors at Kinetic, which help facilitate activities, which help to, again, kind of take a pulse of things that are going on within our company and kind of bring it back to us so we can step in, fix it before it becomes an issue. Leadership became more present. That was so important. Nothing will trump the presence of the CEO or the owner. The spontaneous pop-in from the CEO, nothing can really beat that human element. Now, is it practical when you have a 3,000, 30,000 person organization? Maybe not, but we have a 35 person organization, and we know that when we went from 5, 6 people to 35, we needed to implement that, and it works. Now, it doesn't mean popping in every day, but popping in when it's kind of least expected and connecting with our team and asking how they're doing. Tiny Pulse, man, what a game changer for us. Thank you, David. I almost get emotional, actually, talking about it, because in 2015, we implemented Tiny Pulse, and it was met with actually a lot of reluctance from our team, even though we were super pumped about it. It was met with a little reluctance only because our team didn't fully understand it. They saw that it may have been a platform for passive aggressiveness, right? A platform for like tiny complaints, if you will. And it wasn't anything like that. It was a platform for peer recognition, suggestions, being able to measure the life cycle of those suggestions to fulfillment. But also, it gave our team a platform to vent frustrations, which is a natural part of business. And it's healthy, okay? It can't be sunshine and rainbows all the time, like you said. And we created, and this was another big one, this is right up there with Tiny Pulse. We created a share set of company values. And I look at the company values that are on our walls as not just words on a wall, but kind of a battle cry. And what we do is, and I've heard this in the last 2 days, is the core values have become part of our vernacular. We're using those words. And I think that's a real healthy sign when you start to hear that in the language of your team members. So Christine's going to talk a little bit more about our values.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. So, I've heard values a lot this morning, right? It's such an important part of corporate culture. And I think what's probably the most important thing around values is, if you have them or you don't have them, is they include the input of your team. They reflect what's important to them and who they are and their authentic selves. And so that's how these values were created a couple years ago, as one of the outputs of the culture driving work that the team undertook to kind of get back from the brink to a high-performing business. And these values, as Sean mentioned, have been totally integrated into everything we do. We've built them into our hiring profiles in terms of our interviewing guides. We actually also use Tiny Pulse Perform. And so in addition to goals and business metrics, we put our values in. So every month we're having a conversation with the team on how they're living their values, where do they need help. And then we also use them in recognition with each other. As Sean said, they very much become a common language. What's interesting, though, is now that we've let them, sit with us and live with us for a couple of years, is we're finding they need a little bit of an adjustment, right? So we're actually going through that process right now with our team, starting with our culture ambassadors, to okay, let's take a fresh look. Let's not review the words and all that. Just what does Kinetic mean to you? And we're finding most of those things are on there, but there's a couple of things that have been missing. And so by the end of October, we'll take in this values refresh. And sharing that back with the team based on what they had shared. And I think that's important. It's a good sign of organizational agility. You got to pause, what's working, what's not working, and how do you pivot? So with all of what Kinetic went through before my time, and all the work that was put into place by Sean and team we're doing today, we're super proud of the results that we've achieved. And so Sean's already shared with you the Seattle Business Magazine award. We also got an award from Entrepreneur Magazine earlier this year around our culture. We're super proud of our team and their development and their growth. And you'll see our happiness score for Tiny Pulse, 8.8. It's awesome. It's not good enough. Our goal this year is 9. So the team doesn't know that. That's our goal as a leadership team, to help hold ourselves accountable. And I think the one thing that's missing from this slide from a results perspective is a picture of the team, because that's really what it speaks to. People who are happy and engaged and contributing. So we talked with you a little bit about where we've been. We're going to share a little bit about where we're going, and then some of the challenges we anticipate. And I think you'll hear some things that are familiar in some of the conversations that have happened over the last couple of days, but it's some of the unique aspects we might have in terms of our organization. So earlier this year, actually right as I joined the company, we spent some time really working through the 3-year Vivid Vision. And if you're not familiar with that process, it was learned by Cameron Harold, who's an entrepreneur and a former executive at 1-800-GOT-JUNK. And he's got a very rigorous process around the Vivid Vision. And so this looks like, wow, that's a vision? It's just a couple sentences. It's actually supported by 10 pages of very detailed documentation so that we know exactly what we're looking for as it relates to our people, our communities, our business. It gets very granular. But if you kind of take back, you'll see some of the things that are inherent in Kinetic culture within these 2 sentences right here, 3 sentences. So it's December 31st, 2020. We're taking our industry by storm and experience breathtaking growth with our incredible team. We have transformed Kinetic into a powerful, industry-leading brand. We help people confidently answer the question, how do I get the most out of life? So the first thing I want to pause is you might think the T in team is a typo on here. They didn't catch that. All the editing, actually the T in team, capitalized, is by design. Because one of the things that is important to signal to ourselves and our patients and our communities is without a team, there is nothing, right? And so the team is super important. And because it's so important, we actually want to capitalize and have it stand out. The second thing you'll see on here is this industry-leading brand. And I actually like to think, no, we're not an industry-leading brand. We're actually a category creator, right? We have something very unique and different. And I know that there are a lot of people in the room who actually aren't from Seattle, but if you're in Seattle, you need to come see us. You will have a very different experience than anything you've ever mentioned or experienced before, as Sean mentioned. And so we're really excited and for our growth, how do we create this new category? Because we know there is nothing out there like it. And then the third thing on here is, how do I get the most out of life? I mean, so much, if we're happy, our bodies feel good, our minds feel good, we're being challenged, we have a sense of community, we have shared values, what can we contribute to the broader world? And so our goal at Kinetic is to help every single one of you get more out of your life. I make sure you're functioning properly, that your body feels good. We're exploring things like mindset and mindfulness. We're looking at things like nutrition, and how do we actually leverage our community partnerships so that we all rise together. So that's really some important pieces from our Vivid Vision there. So all this is super exciting, and that's, one of my main parts of my role is I get to wow, how do we actually do this? And it can be very overwhelming, but it's fun and unprecedented. But we know that there's going to be some challenges ahead, right? We've all experienced those. We know that they're there. But we think it's important to call out that if you pause and acknowledge those challenges, you actually have the opportunity to do something about it versus oh, those are challenging, we'll get to it when we get to it, but actually make it a focused part of your plan. And these are things you've heard already this morning, right? So one of our challenges we know is communication. We used to have monthly team meetings, and it was the whole team, because there's only 35 people. But now we have different shifts, we have multiple locations, all that. So how do we actually communicate with people? And so Sean mentioned Dr. Mike Bourbonnais, our CEO, started his weekly emails recently. We're looking at different technologies, but we know that a year from now, we're actually going to be double the size we are today from a revenue and locations and team members. And we've got to find, as part of our plan this year, to really think about how do we communicate. Finding the right people. Hopefully you're getting a sense of our culture and what we value, but finding the right people, it's easy to find people with technical skills. It's easy to find people who've gone to chiropractic school. It's easy to find athletic trainers. It's easy to find front desk people. It's easy to find billing specialists. It's easy to find marketing people. But those people, really, how do they embody our values, right? Because without the unique set of our values and our culture, we cannot impart that to the patients and the people that walk through our doors. Therefore, we can't support the community. So finding the right people is definitely a challenge. So we've started, since I've been there, monthly peopling conversations, I call them. We're talking more proactively about hiring. We're talking more proactively about development. We're reviewing talent plans on a monthly basis, kind of what is our plan for each individual, and bringing those things to make sure not only are we developing the people that we have, but we're actually bringing the right people in. Career development and retention. This is also a challenge too, especially for a small company. And I missed the conversation yesterday on millennials, but we have people who are new in career. A lot of people coming into our company, this is their first job, out of school, whether it's chiropractic school, or maybe it's their second kind of profession, or their first professional job, but not they're just getting started in their career. And so how do we create meaningful work for them? How do we help them grow within their role? How do we help them feel challenged, knowing that we're not going to be able to promote them from here to here to here to here to here? It's not going to happen like that. But this is definitely on our mind, because without any people, there's no company, right? So one of the things we're also working on is how do we get ahead of that, and also acknowledge when it's actually probably might be time for somebody to go, right? As people transition out of the organization because they're not getting their needs met here, how do we actually help them do that in a way that's respectful and graceful to them? And then the last one is staying small while growing big. Sean and I chuckle about this one a lot because I always worry it's about me, because every time I hear the word becoming too corporate, I'm like, is that because I came from a company with 300,000 employees? I've been assured it's not all about me, but it does make me wonder. But we do need to think about how to retain our culture and our sense of community. We also have to scale, right? The way we used to do things in the past, the good stuff, yes, we want to keep. But the kind of telephone game of process and procedure and practices needs to be consistent. It makes people's jobs easier. It makes it easier for our patients. It helps us grow the business. And so we're trying to find the right balance of how do we keep the small feeling that we have, that we know makes us special, but actually scale it for growth. Because doubling in size next year, we can't do the things that we're doing the way we are today to have that actually get us there. So those are some of the challenges ahead that we anticipate. Do you have anything to add before I move on?
No.
Okay. So what could you take away from this? So we'll just wrap this up before we go into the Q&A. So don't hide from problems. So I was the vice president of Lean. If you're not familiar with Lean, it's a continuous improvement concept at Starbucks for a couple of years. And we had this saying called problems are good, right? It used to make people so uncomfortable, especially our senior executives. We don't want to talk about problems. But if you don't actually talk about problems, you can't do anything about it. And so I think one of the things I have so much respect for Sean and Dr. Mike Bourbonnais, our CEO, was they noticed in 2014, we had a problem. And if they didn't stop and talk about it, nothing was going to change, right? So definitely don't hide from problems, no matter how painful they are, because you will not be able to move through if you don't acknowledge them. Commit to culture is a key business priority. I mean, that's probably like a no duh. That's why we're here, right? We're all involved in this. But we really got to continue to double down on that. And one of the things that we've done in the last couple of months is we actually created culture as a line item on our P&L, right? It's literally on our P&L, culture. And I can tell you all the things that go into it if you're interested, but that was a way for us to signal how important that is as our business priority. We want to talk about it when we're doing our financial reviews. Involve the team in the culture driving work. So Sean mentioned we have the culture ambassadors, and that happens in a lot of other ways, but that's a super imperative. So it's not just Sean and I saying, okay, everybody, here's the culture and we're all gonna do this. And everybody be like, oh goodness, that's what I used to call punishment, you know? When other bosses make up stuff for you that's supposed to be fun and it's a punishment. No, we don't want any of that. So getting the team involved will prevent that. And then celebrate progress and wins along the way. Definitely you need to pause even for the little things. One of the things that we do is we do a lot of celebration and tell patient stories. Just small, I got a text yesterday I immediately sent to Sean and then I sent to the whole team from somebody I knew, and it's like, those are wins, right? Especially when times are tough. You need to what are we here for? What's our purpose? And be reminded of that. And then remember, it's all about the people. I think that's the theme here. But it's people, people, people. Without any people, there is no us. There's no business, there's no patients, there's no category creator, there's no new market. All that doesn't really matter. So with that, I think we are ready for Q&A.
Great. So quick question for you, Sean. Why did culture change so quickly? And when you said you lost 50% of your team, was it all bad turnover?
In hindsight, no. At the moment, yeah. Because these were the leaders of our organization. And so when they left, production kind of halted, if you will. And so that was sobering, to say the least. The first part of that question was that when culture shifted for the worse or for better?
It's a great question.
Maybe I'll cover both of them.
Yeah, why don't you do that?
So culture went down when we didn't make it a priority. Simple as that. We didn't even know what it was. It was an idea. It wasn't an action. It wasn't a North Star. When it became, and I'm sure you know where I'm going with this, when it became a culture that's worthy of the number 3 best small company to work for in Washington State is when we made it the North Star, the cornerstone. Literally everything that we decided on, every action, was based on how it would affect the North Star culture. Yeah.
Okay. Can you just elaborate a little bit more about culture being on the P&L?
Sure. This was an idea Mike and I came up with just a few months ago. Like, we keep talking about culture, but culture can feel very ethereal. I don't lack of better words. Yes, we measure it in happiness. We measure it in turnover in terms of do we have a good work environment and how people feel. But really, like, how is it really integrated into everything that we do? And so we just decided, why not put culture on the P&L? Like, it's more of a, I think it's an expense item, obviously, but we look at it, if we're gonna be making investments here, what is the return on that investment? And so some of the things that it includes, actually Tiny Pulse is on there, our expenses for Tiny Pulse on there, team outings, recognition, ongoing continuing education, and there's probably some other stuff. It's new for us. We've only done it in the last 3 months. And we're looking forward to kind of sharing some of that with the team ultimately. We have a little bit more experience under our belt and kind of getting everything plugged in there. But like, hey, here's some of the investments we're making, and all of you, thank you. Thank you for taking advantage of these investments because you guys deserve it.
Great. Last question is around your journey from Starbucks. What are some of the best practices or things that you've brought with you that have influenced where you guys are today?
Well, Starbucks, if you're probably familiar with Starbucks, I see some cups around here. Starbucks is definitely known to be a very people-centered company. What Starbucks employees are called partner-centric. And so I think the things that I bring to Kinetic from Starbucks is, one is just caring deeply about every single person on the team. But some of these processes I mentioned, the peopling process and all of that, I mean, people want to feel valued and they're contributing. And I think they felt that before I came to Kinetic, but now we can actually say, you know what? We have a plan just for you, right? And we can all tell you as leaders what is on this plan and how we're going to help you. And let's have a conversation around that. Without that, people kind of wonder where I fit in, where am I going, what are they saying about me when they have those closed-door meetings? So those are some of the things that I've brought to Starbucks. I'm sure Sean could add others that he's seen me bring in. But the thing is that Kinetic and Starbucks have very similar cultures in terms of people. And that was obviously an important factor for me for making such a change in my career, at this stage in my career, was finding that and see what I could contribute and bring.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.